There are so many here. In fact, I was just at your county courthouse, and I saw the names of the 5 men from this community who died in Vietnam, lost their lives in service to this country. I saw the more than dozen men who lost their lives fighting fascism overseas, defending democracy here at home in World War II. I saw the one man from this community who gave his life in the First World War, the one person who gave his life in our most recent war in Afghanistan. All of them swore an oath not to a political party, not to a president of either party, but to the Constitution, to our way of life, to this great democracy.
We also got the Bartos in Korea too.
That's right. I saw that luckily not a single person from this community died in Korea, though many served, and I'm grateful that you mentioned that as well.
The Constitution also says that we have the right to bear arms and the right to speak and
I am encouraging your right to speak right now, and I'm glad that you're here, and I'm glad that you said that.
it has nothing to do with having our arms that are taken
Let's get right into the question and answer portion of this program.
When are they going to open the Bible?
No, that's okay. Let me answer her question, and I want to do her question justice. She asked about the Second Amendment, and you said that I don't promote the Second Amendment. Here's what I promote as a lifelong Texan, as are many of you who are here. I promote the responsible ownership of these firearms for hunting, for self-defense, for protection, for sport, for whatever. That's your business. It is not mine. I also promote the defense of our kids. No child should go into school this next year fearing that she will be killed by someone wielding an AK-47 or an AR-15. And Uvalde,
Protect the kids.
those parents.
They can still be killed with a knife.
Well, they can be killed a lot faster with a gun.
This is not helpful. We gotta go one at a time. One at a time, please.
Come on in. Come on. Let's everyone try to respect the person who's speaking. I'll speak for a little bit to answer this question. We'll turn it over to somebody else to get their voice in as well. So on this Second Amendment right, I think that we can do a better job of defending our right to have these firearms while protecting the lives of the children in our community. I mean, let me ask you all, do you think we should have a universal background check? If you buy a firearm, there's some kind of vetting to make sure that if you have a violent criminal history, for example, that you don't carry that firearm. But isn't that? Unfortunately, and let me tell you how I know that it's not. Ask your neighbors in Midland, Odessa. Gentleman walked into a licensed gun dealer to try to buy an AR-15. Couldn't pass the background check there. Because we don't have a universal background check in the state of Texas, he was able to buy from a private seller, take that firearm, use it against the people in his community, shooting people indiscriminately, including a baby girl in the face. If we had a universal background check, there would have been a better chance that we could have stopped that mass shooting. A red flag law. If someone says
He would have used a different gun.
he would have used a different gun.
That guy would have stopped it.
What's that?
That guy with the gun would have stopped it.
You mean like those hundreds of cops who are at Uvalde with an unlocked door? So,
Shooting at all of North and Louisiana, and so there was no common bar. Yeah, the cops in Florida, the ones at Uvalde, where the hell were they? Standing outside, not going in there and protecting those kids.
that's right. Yeah. I think we agree on this. So that's how I feel about
Did you say you
firearms.
agree?
I just said I agreed with him when he said, where were those cops? Why didn't they go in? They should have. We're still awaiting justice. We're still awaiting answers. I talked to those families in Uvalde. They still don't know the full story of what happened to their kids and why that happened. We haven't seen the governor show up since the days immediately after that shooting. He's been stonewalling answers to them. We deserve, and they deserve, justice in this state. What's that? That's right. That's right. I happen to be there to stand up for those families and those kids and demand answers and ensure that we don't continue to have this in our schools. You all have kids. You have grandkids. You care just as much for your families as I do for mine. It concerns me, as I hope it concerns you, that nothing has changed in our state before the beginning of this next school year. I've got 3 kids, 2 in high school, 1 in middle school, walking into those classrooms, no better protected against somebody who could buy at the age of 18 a weapon originally designed for use in combat, and buy not 1 but 2 of them, hundreds of rounds of ammunition, and be able to walk right into that school. That is the condition that we have in too many places in Texas today. So I want to make sure that, what's that? So we shouldn't have any laws then. If the criminals are going to do what they want, why have a law to begin with, right? Why not allow you to carry machine guns or rocket launchers? We are a nation of laws.
On how they're going to get their guns. They're simply going to get them. You're only affecting the good citizens.
Let Beto talk.
That's right.
Let Beto talk.
As a former high school student, we have signs that arm the teachers at Spearman High School. When we were there, I didn't feel fear. I didn't feel the fear that I was going to die one day. The only problem is that we're not taking the right steps into arming the students, into not shooting the students, into keeping the children safe. What the Spearman High School did was we armed the teachers, and that helped. And that helped keep us safe. And it sounds very good and very barbaric. However, that is one of the things that made me feel safe.
I hear you. You know what? As governor, I would respect that decision at the local level. You understand this community, these students, the teachers, how you can keep yourself safe better than anybody in Austin or Washington, D.C. for that matter. By that same token, I've listened to a lot of educators and teachers who do not want to carry a firearm into the classroom and be asked to potentially shoot an armed intruder or one of their own students. They shouldn't have to fear that or worry about that. They should focus on those kids in front of them. And that's what I want to do by supporting those teachers. You know, here's the thing. I don't know how often Greg Abbott has shown up and taken your questions the way that I am right now. In fact, I think he's sleeping on your community, thinks he's got your votes in the bank, doesn't have to make investments in Spearman, Texas, doesn't have to make investments in Spearman, Texas. I'm showing up to listen to and learn from a community that I want to serve. And I could care less whether you vote for me or not. Whether you vote for me or not, that doesn't matter.
He was on conference calls with me last 2 weeks. Anybody here can get on the conference call with Governor Abbott.
That's wonderful. If you guys are satisfied with a conference call instead of somebody actually showing up and visiting your community, have at it all day long. But I'm here right now because there are too many parts of this state that don't receive the resources, the recognition, the attention, the respect that they deserve. There's no greater way of showing that than showing up and listening to the people about what their issues are and how we can do better. I want to listen to you, Katie, because you've been patient and hear what's on your mind. I just met Katie at the restaurant where we just had lunch.
All right, so I wanted to ask, so back on the gun issue, which is obviously going to be a big problem. So I also go to Spearman High School, and we had a situation like a couple of years ago. I don't know, do you remember? Someone threatened to come in and shoot up our school, and like small town Spearman, Texas, you don't expect this to happen. So I do want to know, like, what exactly would you like to do as governor? Like, I want to know what your ideas are exactly, instead of just saying maybe just gun control. What are your exact ideas?
Here are my exact ideas. I began to say universal background checks ensure that if someone has a violent criminal history, significant mental health issues, that we prevent them from having a firearm that they could use against themselves or someone else. We also want to make sure that we have a red flag law so that if someone is threatening, as that person did in Spearman, to shoot up their school and they have a firearm in their possession, we can, through due process, intervene before it is too late. The guy who shot up that school in Uvalde, Texas with those AR-15s, he was sending off signals in every single direction, but law enforcement was powerless to intervene because we don't have a red flag law on the book.
Red flag law just takes away guns without due process. A girlfriend, a boyfriend can just say, oh, he's crazy, he's got a gun, or she's crazy, got a gun, go shoot somebody, since it's usually not a woman, but most guys, and get locked up, guns taken away, and they almost never get the guns back, and have to go through and spend a lot of money to get it back, if they ever
Yeah, I hear your point of view. I was trying to listen to hers and respond to the question that she'd asked. Two more ideas related to this. One is safe storage. If you have a young person in your home, you have firearms in the household, keep them locked up so they can't get their hands on them, so they can't walk them into a school, as a 17-year-old did in Santa Fe High School in 2018. And then at a minimum, raise the age of purchase for an AR-15 or AK-47 to 21 years of age. Those four ideas, most gun owners, most non-gun owners, most Republicans, most Democrats that I've listened to can get behind that. There's a lot that we may argue on, points that we'll disagree with, but that will help us become more safe in our schools. If we'll also listen to teachers, to educators, to high school students about how we can improve safety in their individual schools. They understand those campuses better than anybody else. Let's follow their lead and make sure that we're allowing them and partnering with them to get that done. The governor mentioned mental health care, right? We're 51st in the nation in mental health care access. The month before Uvalde, Greg Abbott takes $211 million out of the mental health care budget of the state of Texas. I'm all for fully funding mental health care. That means expanding Medicaid, $10 billion more a year that comes into the state. And it also means adding to that so that anybody who's in crisis, anybody who has a significant issue is able to get care without worrying about whether they're going to be able to afford it. So listening to those who work and go to school on these campuses, making sure that we have more gun sense legislation, greater access to mental health care. It will not stop every shooting. Point taken to somebody who raised that. Won't stop the person who wants to come in with a knife or a rock in some cases, okay? I hear you. But a knife or a rock versus an AR-15 with hundreds of rounds of ammunition, I think we can be very clear that those are two different outcomes. That's what I would do were I governor to make things better. Katie, let me ask you, since you're a student right now, what would you do? What do you want to do? What would make school better for you?
Honestly, I do like that we have some teachers armed. It does make me feel safe there. But I feel like, I under no circumstances think anyone's gun should be taken away, but I don't think just every single person, whether they should have, are mentally capable of having a gun or not having a gun, should be able to just buy a gun with zero background checks. I don't want guns taken away, but I like that it could help me feel a little safer at school.
The government cannot make that decision.
That's great.
This is the state government also.
Yeah.
Which means it's...
Thank you. Listen, I want to get as many voices in from anyone who's here. Maybe the best way to have the conversation is if you'll raise your hand. Cynthia will bring you a microphone. And really, we're open to anybody wanting to say anything. You've got somebody back
And
there.
thank you for raising your hand.
You can't legislate morality. There's going to be crazy people out there. We do need lots of mental health help. Look at the homeless people. I know a lot of them are mentally unhealthy. But you can't just do more laws because it's the criminals that disobey the laws. And besides that, the 18-year-olds that have gone to service, what are they going to do when they come back and they can't buy an AR-15 or shoot their AR-15? I don't think that's ludicrous too.
Thank you for your comments. We can't legislate morality. I agree with you, but we can try to make our communities safer. None of us is okay with those 19 kids being shot and killed. None of us is okay with those 2 teachers in the classroom who lost their lives. I hope all of us agree that we got to do something different, or we can expect another mass shooting like that. It wasn't just Uvalde. 23 people slaughtered in my hometown of El Paso. The 8 I mentioned in Midland, Odessa, Sutherland Springs, Santa Fe High School. It goes on and on and on. We are not inherently evil. We are not a bad people. We are not necessarily violent. We are humans who are dealing with a human-caused problem. We've got to come up with a human solution to this. I'm here to listen. Looking forward to what you all have to say as well. Cynthia will bring the microphone to you if you raise your hand.
Well, Mr. O'Rourke, I just have one question to ask you. In regards to what you've said constantly before, and even in the presidential election, you've quoted, hell yes, we're going to take your AR-15s, your AK-47s. Previously, you've mentioned before that you have been pro-gun and also have been anti-gun taking, in which you've also mentioned that in the Odessa Permian in your early stage of the election. So let me ask you this. What stance are you right now?
Yeah.
Because you are, as what I'm seeing right now, you're being very hypocritical on your stance on being either pro-gun or anti-gun.
Okay, thank you for asking the question. I don't think anyone should have an AR-15 or an AK-47 unless they are in a war on a battlefield trying to kill an enemy soldier. AR-15.
Do you know what an
Will you allow me to answer the question, or would you like to speak?
Let's take turns.
Okay.
Let's take turns. We're all grown ups.
So I'm going to answer your question. The AR-15 was originally designed, engineered, and sold to militaries like the United States military to be able to shoot and kill an enemy soldier at 500 yards through his helmet. When that same weapon is used against a 10-year-old child who has no helmet on, it pulverizes, turns to liquid everything inside. I know that from meeting the victims of the El Paso shooting when that person had an AK-47. All the soft tissue, all of the arteries, all of the organs, absolutely destroyed. You bleed out as intended before we can revive you and save your life. Have you all tried hunting with AR-15s or AK-47s? Have you tried to eat what you have hunted with those? I understand that they make sense with feral hogs and invasive species, but this is not what we use to hunt birds. It's not what we use to hunt deer. This is not what we use to hunt elk. Well, you know what? You must be a pretty poor shot because there are better weapons to use than AR-15. Yeah.
Do you know what AR stands for in AR-15?
Armalite.
There you go. So if that's the case, why are you calling it Assault Rifle 15? As you mentioned,
I just told you it was designed for use. It was designed for use in war.
And let me ask you this: how much do you really care for those children you called in Texas? How much do you really care for them?
I've been back 4 times. I've been to a funeral. I've been to a visitation. I talked to those families constantly. I marched with them. I've rallied with them in Uvalde. I'm still talking to them to make sure that we follow their wishes.
So then
Number
why-
one, they
Okay,
want
we
justice.
have a next
Number
question.
2, they want us to
Over
take
here.
action to make
Come
sure
on
that this
over.
doesn't happen again.
Here we go.
I
Here's
care
our
very
next
much for those families.
Hello, Betsy. Thank you so much for coming on and speaking to us. Me and my friend Andy, we're from West Texas A&M. Go Buffs.
Go Buffs.
We're both from Perryton originally, and we come from a very small rural community. And so we're wondering, how are you going to make? Do you have any plans to make college more affordable for us students coming from these rural backgrounds who may not have the resources available to afford a 4-year university?
Absolutely. I mentioned this part of the state and rural Texas at large being taken for granted by those who are in power. Part of the problem is that when it comes to educational opportunities, very often those classrooms are full of kids from the big cities, from the suburbs, but from smaller rural counties. We don't see enough of them. So as governor, I want to make sure that I invest in your and every Texan's education. I want to make sure we have world-class pre-K through 12, but I also want to make sure that at a minimum, the first 2 years of your college education are at no out-of-pocket cost to you. It will force you to incur debt. And if you want to work in an in-demand profession, here, I'll take that microphone because we're having a hard time with this First Amendment right we're talking about. There are in-demand professions like teaching. We have too many educators leaving the profession right now. If that's a path that you want to choose as governor, I want to clear the path so that you are not incurring debt to be in that classroom to teach our kids. If you want to be a medical professional, a doctor or a nurse, I want to be able to do the same thing for you. And as governor, I'm going to restore something that has since been canceled called the Rural Scholars Program. What that means is that if you live in Spearman, for example, and you want to go to medical school, but otherwise cannot afford it or don't want to take hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt on, we're going to pay your way on condition that you come back to Spearman and practice medicine here for at least 6 years. I want to make sure that we fully restore that Rural Scholars Program and make sure that it works for every single rural community. We have a healthcare shortage throughout rural Texas. We've had 24 hospitals closed down in rural communities just over the last 10 years. By investing in people like you, by expanding Medicaid and bringing an additional $10 billion in a year, by making sure that at least the first 2 years of your college are debt-free, we're going to make this more affordable for you to live to your full potential. Thanks for asking the question. Appreciate it.
Again, if you raise your hand, I will come to you. But please don't talk while others are talking. We will be very respectful. While you're talking, everybody please just wait, and then I'll come to you, sir.
If we do that, Who's going to pay for it? The taxpayers. And if you do that, I want reparations for my 3 kids that I put through school. And I paid for every dime of it and saved up. So why should they get free deal and us all having to pay for it? My kids have come back and they're here too. And they're supporting their community. So why open it up to just a few? Open it up to all. Give us all reparations.
Yeah. So as I just said, I want to make sure that every young person in Texas has the opportunity to pursue higher education, if that's what they want to do, to get workforce training, if that's what they want to do, to be able to join a union and enter an apprenticeship, if that's what they want to be able to do. Too many people right now struggle with cost as an object, with the inability to take on debt, or they have so much debt that they can't continue. Not too far from this community, I was driving down the road trying to get some vitamins in my system, stopped at a roadside fruit and produce stand. The young man working it had gone to West Texas A&M, said he took too much debt on, he couldn't continue. What he really wanted to do was become a welder, but as he pursued his certification, he said, even going to the technical school is too expensive for me right now, so I'm on the side of the road working this job. He's a hardworking guy, maybe he puts the money together, maybe he gets it done, maybe he doesn't. But I want to make sure that he has that opportunity. I've had that opportunity. You mentioned your kids have had that opportunity. We want every child to be able to reach their full potential. Who pays for it? We have a $2 trillion GDP. We have a $250 billion biannual budget. We have the resources to be able to pay for that. It's just a matter of priorities, right? And what if we did this? What if we asked the corporations in the state of Texas to pay their fair share when it comes to things like property taxes, to reduce the burden on the property taxpayer, the homeowner, the farmer, and the rancher, whose appraisals and property taxes have gone through the roof. $20 billion increase, 40% increase since Greg Abbott has been the governor of this state. Those corporations kick in their fair share. That's an additional $3 to $6 billion a year that we're able to bring in. If we do smart things like having the state of Texas pay its fair share of pre-K through 12 funding, we also reduce the burden on the local property taxpayer here, and we free up resources to focus on higher education, or paying our teachers who are in those K through 12 schools a little bit more, or a cost of living adjustment for every retired teacher who has not received one since the year of our Lord 2004, or investing in broadband internet for the communities that right now cannot get online. We do have real needs in this state, and investing in them I see as more of an investment than anything else. When that young person gets an education, they are going to earn more over the course of their lives. They're going to be able to shoulder a greater share of the burden and relieve yours. We all do better when everyone has a chance to do better in the state of Texas. So we have the resources to do it. I want to make sure that we're focused on the communities and the people who need them. That's why I'm here in your community today.
You got it? Okay. This gentleman has one right here.
Thank you. We know your position on guns and why, and we all want our kids to be safe. So why don't you care anything about all of the millions of unborn kids that you support abortion for?
Amen.
Yeah.
Thank you for asking the question. I believe the decision that a woman makes about her pregnancy is hers and hers alone
What about
to
the
make.
kids?
I'd love to answer your question if you give me the opportunity, sir. It's been the law of the land for the last half century, won by Texas women like Sarah Weathington from Abilene, Texas, who argued that case before the Supreme Court. Right now, there is no exception for rape. There is no exception for incest. You can be forced to carry the child of your rapist. It doesn't matter if you're 10 years old, 15 years old, 20 years old. That's the law of the land in the state of Texas today. We have women who are carrying children that are no longer viable, but are forced to do so because the law of the state of Texas says that they cannot do anything about it. We have Republican legislators who are threatening to stop women from leaving the state of Texas to make their own personal, private healthcare decisions. I understand that you and I disagree on this issue. I just very strongly believe and very much trust in women to make their own decisions about their own future, their own body, and their own health care. I'll do everything I can as governor to make sure that we restore protections for that right. Thank you for asking the
I
question.
have a question along the same lines.
Sure.
A moment ago, you mentioned about the 10-year-old girl that was slaughtered in El Paso, your hometown. Talked about the damage to the tissue and the arteries that that crazy person inflicted on that child. Do you know that that child 10 years and 6 months before had the same arteries and the same tissue? Do you know the circumstances of her birth into this world? Is it any different? What was the story behind her birth? You don't know, but we're supposed to care about the child, and it does evoke deep emotion, I think, in every person here. But what about that 10-year-old child at 10 years and 6 months before that?
I understand that these are deeply held and sometimes religious and very personal beliefs. And I'm not here to try to change your mind. I've just met too many women across the state who told me how painful and personal that decision is for them. And for as many women who have elected to terminate a pregnancy, there are that many different stories about why they made that decision. It's intensely personal, it's intensely painful, and I trust that woman to know herself in those decisions better than I or any legislator ever would. I mean, for those of you who believe in individual liberty and freedom and protection from government, why are we allowing government to come in and tell women what they can and cannot do in this state? So that's where you and I just differ on this issue. And again, I respect your point of view and the way that you feel about this.
Okay, along those same lines, there's
Here,
been
let me give you the mic.
There's been a lot of rage and a lot of emotion and a lot of acting out over the recent action taken on the Roe versus Wade. But 50 years ago, that should never have even been evoked. It's not constitutional. Why are we finding the rage today over that when it should, I think everyone's known for the 50 years since it was there, that it should always have been in a different category than where it was. In that, let's just accept that and go, oh, we're going to have differences. But that same little girl mattered before she was born.
All right, these are going to be our 2 last questions right here.
I'm going off on a different angle. I have a member of my family who's a veteran, and he served twice in Afghanistan. He had opposed brain injuries and PTSD, and he's not getting the mental health care he needs, and he had a lot of trouble getting the medical care that he needed for his injuries. What do you have in mind for that if you are elected governor?
Thank you for the question. I started my comments talking about those from this community who served this country in war and in combat. I mentioned the 5 who we lost in Vietnam. I believe it was 15 from this community in World War II. The deal that we've made, going all the way back to when Abraham Lincoln was president, is that if you put your life on the line for America, we're going to hold up our end of the bargain and make sure that you're taken care of when you come back to your community, to your family, to this country that you defended and were willing to die for. We're absolutely failing to do that right now in this country. Those Vietnam veterans waited 40 years for exposure to Agent Orange to be treated as a presumptive condition for the cancers that they were incurring and the things that they were dying from. Those who are coming back from Afghanistan, from Iraq, in this generation, have been exposed to toxic burn pits, breathing in literally God only knows what, and now having a hard time breathing when they're back at home, they're on the job here in Spearman. I want to make sure that we spare no expense, that we lift any burden before us to make sure that we're taking care of those women and those men who've done so much to take care of all of us. I served 6 years on the House Veterans Affairs Committee, spent time at VAs all through this state, including the clinic up here in Dalhart, one in my hometown of El Paso. Always trying to find ways for us to do better. I'll give you an example on this issue of mental health care. If you're a veteran and you have what is known as an other than honorable discharge from service to this country, part of the consequence previously was you couldn't go to the VA. You had PTSD, you had traumatic brain injury, military sexual trauma. Whatever happened in your service, you're not going to be able to get treated. Well, we know that in this country, about 20 to 22 veterans every day take their lives. The rate for veterans who have an other than honorable discharge was twice as high. So I wrote this bill called the Honor or Commitment Act to open up the VA to these OTH veterans. I was in a Republican majority institution. Wasn't going to go anywhere unless I could find some bipartisan support. Worked on this bill with a Republican colleague. You know, we don't see eye to eye on everything, but we probably see eye to eye on wanting to do better for veterans. He suggested some changes. I accepted those. We got a consensus bill passed by the House of Representatives, 435 to 0, passed in the United States Senate, and signed into law by Donald J. Trump. We can find common ground where we look for it, where we work for it, where we're willing to listen to one another, even when we disagree, when we come to different conclusions on things that are really important to us and really important to this country. The VA, I hope, is one of the last bastions of bipartisanship. So as governor, a few things that I want to work on. One, I want to make sure that we stand up a toxic burn pit registry in the state of Texas, connect every returning veteran from our most recent conflicts past 9/11 with the care that they need. Two, I want to reduce veteran suicide in the state of Texas. I mentioned earlier we're 51st in the nation in access to mental health care. I want to invest in that significantly, but I especially want to make sure that we're connecting veterans who have mental health care issues with the VA. If the VA has too much of a backlog or in a specific instance cannot get its act together, we connect them with private care and we pay for that care. Third, despite being the wealthiest country on the face of the planet and the 9th largest economy in the world right here in the state of Texas, there will be hundreds of veterans this evening who will be sleeping in parks just like this one, underneath bridges, on the sides of the road. I want to invest in veterans housing to make sure that every single veteran has that as something they don't have to worry about, so they can focus on their rehabilitation, their care, finding a job, serving their community in another capacity when they return to civilian life. This is something that I've listened to veterans on across the state of Texas, worked with people who've been doing this in their individual communities. These are things that are going to improve outcomes for veterans across this state. I'll bet. Thanks for asking the question.
All right, this is going to be our last question.
Hi, I was just wondering what exactly you're going to do to restore my rights as a woman to medical privacy, and how fast you can get those bounties removed for the people that help other people make their own medical choices.
Yeah, as you just said, in this state, there's a $10,000 bounty on anyone who assists any woman in making her own healthcare decisions. We just learned from a group of legislators, Republican legislators in the Texas legislature, that are called the Freedom Caucus. They now want to target any employer, any small business who wants to help a female employee travel to another state to make her own decisions about her own body. It's not enough to dictate to her what she can or can't do in the state of Texas. We're now going to tell her what she can do in New Mexico or really any other place that she wants to go, and we're going to pursue her employer as well. There have even been some who talked about checking the travel documents of women of childbearing age should they seek to leave the state of Texas. It sounds crazy, but that's exactly what's coming down the pike. So as governor, I'll be able to veto many of these harmful, dangerous, deadly ideas. We're a state that leads much of the developed world in the rate of maternal mortality right now, in large part because we made it so hard for women to make their own private medical and healthcare decisions. And then I'm going to look for common ground, even where we may think that it is impossible, to find a way that we support a woman being as healthy as she can possibly be, living up to her full potential and promise over the course of her life. And yes, that means being able to make her own personal and private decisions about her own body. It's something that I strongly, strongly believe in. I'm fighting for right now as a candidate. And as governor, I'm going to do everything I can within the power of that office to make sure that we restore those protections that have existed in this state for the last 49 years, almost every single day of my life. So thank you for asking this question as well.
What about
Appreciate
the
it.
mandates for the vaccine and stuff like that? What about our individual rights, opposing mandates to help you get a vaccine that hasn't been tested?
My body, my choice.
Yeah, the questions about protecting our bodies, our choice, I'm with you. I don't think the federal government, the state government should be involved in telling you what you can't do with your body, what a woman can or cannot do with the decisions that she makes in her life. So anyhow, listen, glad that you all showed up. Very grateful to you, for everybody who was here, those who came to offer an alternative point of view, those who are asking questions that we may come to the same conclusion on. All of us are Texans, all of us are important. As governor, I will seek to serve all of us. Thank you all very much for coming out. Appreciate it. Gracias.